I gave everything. My time, my energy, my soul. For years, I dimmed my light so others could shine, so he could shine. I cooked, cleaned, forgave, forgot. I silenced my pain so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. And what did he give me in return? Snide comments about how I was too sensitive. Eye rolls when I asked for help. Cold silence when I needed warmth the most. He laughed with other women, but barely looked up when I walked in the room. And when I finally cried from exhaustion, he said, "You're always so dramatic. No one's doing this to you but yourself." That was the moment something inside me broke. Or maybe finally, something woke up. I saw it then. I wasn't broken. I was buried, under years of guilt, expectation, and other people's comfort. So I stopped apologizing, and I started reclaiming. Hi, I'm Claire, and this is the story of how I stopped sacrificing myself for people who never deserved me. It was a normal Tuesday evening when everything in my life came crashing down. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, a habit I had adopted to unwind after a long day. My husband, Jake, had just left for a business trip he'd been planning for weeks. He had mentioned this trip multiple times, and I hadn't thought twice about it until now. As I flicked through my Instagram feed, a notification popped up on his phone. I didn't mean to pry, but something about the message caught my eye. I glanced down, and there it was, a text from someone named Caitlin. It wasn't the message that bothered me, it was the sheer intimacy of it. The words were simple enough. "I'll see you later tonight. I miss you." My heart skipped a beat. Who was Caitlin, and why was she texting my husband in such a familiar, affectionate manner? I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just an old friend, someone from work, or, dare I hope, nothing at all. But my mind was racing, and I couldn't ignore the growing pit in my chest. As much as I tried to dismiss it, the thought gnawed at me. I didn't have any concrete evidence, but the nagging doubt lingered. The thought of confronting him now felt like an endless spiral of shame. What if I was wrong? What if I misunderstood? The anxiety built up inside of me, a wave of dread crashing over every rational thought I had. But then another message came. This one was more direct. "I'm counting the days until I can finally see you. Don't keep me waiting." My blood ran cold. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't ignore what was happening. I couldn't pretend anymore that everything was fine when the very foundation of my marriage was unraveling right in front of my eyes. What was going on? Who was this Caitlin, and why was my husband messaging her this way? In that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let him treat me like this and walk away unscathed. I had spent years pouring my heart and soul into our marriage. I had supported him through everything. His career, struggles, his doubts, his family issues, and this was how he repaid me? With lies and deceit? No, not anymore. I opened the message, heart pounding, and read it again. It wasn't just a simple fling, it was something more. Jake thought I didn't know, but I was about to show him just how wrong he was. I looked down at my phone, knowing that this was only the beginning. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be the passive wife anymore, silently suffering in the background. He was going to learn the consequences of betraying me. And Caitlin? She was about to find out exactly who I was and why she should have stayed out of my marriage. This wasn't about just confronting Jake. It was about reclaiming my dignity and power. The game had changed, and I was done playing by his rules. I was about to give him an ultimatum, a choice he couldn't walk away from. And when I did, everything would change. Jake came home 2 days later, as calm and casual as ever. He kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed, like he hadn't just spent the last 48 hours whispering sweet nothings to another woman. I watched him move around the kitchen, pouring coffee like he wasn't carrying betrayal in his pocket, right next to his phone. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I asked him how his business trip went. He gave me some half-baked story about meetings running late and staying in a hotel near the airport. I nodded, pretending to listen. But inside, I was dissecting every word, every pause, every shift in his tone. He had no idea that I had already looked through his messages, seen the photos, and recognized Caitlin's face from a Facebook group he forgot I was part of. They had met at a conference 2 months ago. That much I gathered from his texts. What started as casual flirtation had evolved into secret dinners, weekend rendezvous, and worse. He had told her he was working on getting out of his marriage. I saw it in his own words. "She doesn't understand me the way you do. I can't keep pretending with her." The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was deliberate, calculated. Jake wasn't slipping. He was planning an escape. One where he left me behind, with nothing but broken promises and a mortgage I could barely afford alone. That night, I stood in the bathroom staring at myself in the mirror. My face was tired, not from lack of sleep, but from years of emotional labor. I had held up our marriage while he drifted further away. I had given up promotions to move for his job. I had held my tongue during arguments when he made me feel small, unimportant, replaceable. And all for what? For him to whisper lies into someone else's ear? He didn't just cheat. He erased me, replaced me, like I was disposable, like the life we built together meant nothing. The worst part wasn't just the cheating. It was that he thought I wouldn't find out, that I wouldn't fight back, that I was too soft, too dependent, too emotionally broken to do anything about it. But Jake had underestimated me. He didn't know about the bank account I had opened in my name 6 months ago after noticing strange patterns in his spending. He didn't know I had already copied every financial record from our shared accounts. I had my own version of insurance, quietly built in the shadows of his lies. I started seeing him for what he really was, manipulative, arrogant, and careless. He played a good game, always kept just enough affection to keep me hopeful, always just enough distraction to avoid suspicion. But now the illusion had shattered. I began to notice the micro-betrayals that led up to this. The nights he fell asleep at the office, the business dinners I wasn't invited to, the passwords he suddenly changed. He had been preparing for this, grooming me to accept the bare minimum while he laid the groundwork for a life with someone else. And that was when the anger kicked in. The righteous, scorching kind of fury that burns through grief and leaves only resolve behind. He didn't just cheat on me. He tried to erase me from my own life, but I wasn't going anywhere. He wanted out? Fine, he could leave, but not without knowing exactly what he was walking away from and exactly what it would cost him. I didn't cry that night. Not anymore. I had already mourned the man I thought I married. Now it was time to make him face the woman he never saw coming. I sat alone in the living room that weekend, looking at the photo wall we had once proudly built together, smiling. Pictures from vacations, holiday dinners, and birthdays stared back at me, each frame now feeling like a monument to a lie. I stared longest at the photo of us in front of our first house. Jake had his arm around me, eyes lit with something I once believed was love. Now all I saw was performance. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep the betrayal ran. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about the way he slowly dismantled the foundation of my life without ever once asking if I was okay. I had spent years believing in our future, in a home we'd build, maybe children someday, a retirement plan, shared dreams. He had already started erasing those dreams, just not from the outside. He was clever, strategic. He knew how to keep me comfortable just long enough to keep questioning myself instead of him. And I had doubted myself for so long. Every time I sensed he was distant, I blamed myself. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I wasn't giving him enough space. Maybe I needed to work harder at the relationship. It took catching him red-handed to realize the truth. I had been carrying the emotional weight for both of us, while he packed his bags in secret. But what broke me wasn't even the affair itself, it was the aftermath. Because while I wrestled with what to do, whether to confront him or wait until I had everything lined up, he became bolder, less careful, almost like he wanted me to find out, like he was preparing for a clean break without guilt. He started making jokes about forgetting anniversaries and losing connection. He even had the audacity to suggest we take some space for clarity. He was trying to inch his way out while keeping the door open just in case Caitlin didn't pan out. And it mattered, Because I knew if I didn't act now, if I didn't take control, I would lose everything I had sacrificed for. Not just emotionally, but legally and financially. Jake had always been the one to handle our bills, our taxes, our savings, and I let him. Because I trusted him. But trust, I learned, is a luxury you can't afford with a liar. I logged into our joint account and felt my chest tighten. Large withdrawals, transfers I hadn't approved, hotel bookings I had never heard about, even purchases in Caitlin's city, 2 states away. This wasn't just infidelity. This was financial betrayal. He was moving money around while keeping me in the dark, preparing his new life while I lived in the ashes of the old one. If I didn't take action soon, I could lose more than my marriage. I could lose the house, my savings, everything we'd built. That's when it hit me. This mattered not just because he broke my heart, but because he believed he could ruin my life and get away with it. He thought I'd be too heartbroken to fight back, too emotional to notice the details, too naive to realize the legal consequences of his actions. He thought I'd crumble. But what he forgot is that betrayal doesn't just break you, it wakes you up. And when a woman wakes up from a life of lies, she doesn't beg. She calculates. So, I made a list. Every password I could remember. Every bank transaction I didn't authorize. Every screenshot of his messages. Every receipt I could get my hands on. I wasn't going to confront him in a screaming match. I wasn't going to sob on the floor while he made excuses. No, I was going to show him what it feels like to be on the receiving end of betrayal, to realize too late that the person you underestimated now holds the keys to your downfall, and that's why it mattered. Because the woman he thought he could discard? She was about to rewrite the ending. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in weeks. No more spiraling, no more crying in the bathroom, no more wondering what I did wrong. That version of me, the version that tiptoed around Jake's moods and gave him the benefit of the doubt, was gone. Now I had a plan. I started simple, quiet, controlled. First, I backed up every message from Jake's phone that I'd already seen. He hadn't changed his passcode. He still thought I was clueless. I transferred the photos, the texts, and even a few voice messages to a hidden drive on my cloud. I labeled the folder Vacation Plans. He'd never think to open it. Next, I contacted an attorney, a woman named Marcia. She came highly recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a similar situation. I didn't tell Jake I was seeking legal advice. I didn't even hint at it. I played the same role I had for years, the doting, gentle wife, smiled, cooked dinner, laughed at his terrible jokes. Meanwhile, Marcia was helping me figure out exactly what I was entitled to. And it was a lot more than Jake had assumed. Turns out, since most of our assets were in both our names, he couldn't just walk away and start over with Caitlin without consequences. And if I could prove he had misused marital funds, even better. While Marcia worked the legal side, I got to work on my own front, the emotional chessboard. I began to document his absences. When he claimed to be working late, I'd jot down the times. I'd log every dinner he missed, every unexplained expense. I even started recording calls when he'd slip up and say things like, "I just need some space. I'm not sure this is working anymore." Piece by piece, I was building my case. And while I gathered evidence, I also reconnected with myself. The version of me I had shelved for his comfort. I returned to yoga class. I went out to dinner with friends I hadn't seen in months, friends Jake didn't like because they asked too many questions. I even started a part-time consulting gig in marketing, something I had put on hold for his career advancement. And then I planned the confrontation. Not an ambush, not a screaming match, a choice. I wasn't going to stoop to his level. I was going to hand him the truth piece by piece and let him decide which road to take, knowing both would lead to consequences. I booked a weekend getaway under the guise of reconnecting. I told him I missed us, that maybe some time alone would help. Of course, he jumped at it, probably thinking he could sneak away for a final visit to Caitlin without guilt, or that I was softening. What he didn't know was that the hotel I booked had security cameras, and I made sure our check-in would overlap with the date he claimed he had a conference. If he tried to pull anything, I'd have the proof. But more than that, I wanted one final moment where I could look him in the eye, knowing I held every card. I was ready to give him an ultimatum, one rooted not in emotion, but in facts. I had the texts, the bank transfers, the receipts, the timeline. He could come clean. We could divorce like adults, with dignity and fairness, or I could drag this out and show the court just how deep his betrayal ran. I didn't want revenge just for the sake of pain. I wanted accountability. I wanted him to see the woman he left behind not as broken, but as formidable. So I rehearsed my words. I packed my bag, and I walked into that weekend not as his wife, but as the reckoning he never saw coming. The plan was in motion. And Jake? He was about to choose his fate. The hotel room was too quiet. Jake was in the shower, humming like a man without a care in the world. Meanwhile, I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers resting on the envelope in my lap. Inside it was everything. The printouts of his messages to Caitlin, the photos of them together at that wine bar 2 cities away, the list of unauthorized expenses, and the financial transactions that screamed fraud. I had spent the last 2 weeks preparing it, every line highlighted, every timestamp cross-checked. It wasn't just a folder, it was my freedom. When Jake stepped out in nothing but a towel, I looked up and smiled like everything was normal. He kissed my forehead and started to scroll through his phone, completely unaware that I'd already mirrored his device the night before using software Marcia recommended. I had full access now. I could see every text, every calendar entry, every late-night good-night message to a woman who wasn't me. He sat next to me, leaned back against the headboard, and sighed like life was tiring him out. "Thanks for suggesting this trip," he said, without looking at me. "I needed this." "I know," I replied. "So did I." Then I handed him the envelope. He looked confused at first. "What's this?" "Everything," I said. He opened it slowly, and the further he got, the quieter he became. His fingers stopped flipping pages when he got to the screenshot of his message that read, "Don't worry, she's too soft to ever do anything about it." I watched his mouth open, then close. For once, Jake had nothing to say. "Before you." "Try to lie," I said calmly. "Just know I've already met with an attorney. Everything in that envelope is admissible in court. The bank statements, the hotel bookings, the photos, even the Venmo payments you sent her labeled laundry and Uber. Very creative, by the way." His eyes darted between the pages, then to me. "You went through my phone?" "You left the truth in plain sight," I said. "All I did was pick it up." He stood, pacing, muttering things like, "You're blowing this out of proportion," and "This wasn't serious." That's when I gave him the ultimatum. "You have 2 choices, Jake. 1, we go to court. I present all of this, you face fraud and infidelity charges, and I freeze our joint assets first thing Monday. Or 2, you sign this." I pulled out a second envelope. Inside, the draft of a divorce agreement. Fair, but not generous. I'd keep the house. He'd vacate within 30 days. I wouldn't go after alimony or press for fraud if he agreed to end this quietly. His eyes narrowed. "You've been planning this?" "No," I said. "You did. I just caught up." He sat down again, this time with his head in his hands. It was the first time I'd seen the mask fall, the arrogance melt. Jake wasn't in control anymore. He didn't sign right away, but I saw the fear creep in, not because he was sorry, but because he finally realized I had the power to ruin him the same way he tried to ruin me. The rest of the trip was awkward silence. No more humming in the shower. No more fake laughs. Just a man sitting beside the woman he once underestimated, realizing he'd miscalculated her entirely. And when we returned home, I didn't wait. I moved half of our shared savings into my separate account, well within my legal rights. I alerted the bank to any suspicious activity. I changed the locks the day after he moved out. Jake tried to text. Apologies, excuses, even one pathetic, "Can we talk?" I didn't respond, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear, controlled, free. And while he scrambled to patch up his life with a woman who thought deception was romantic, I was rebuilding mine, brick by brick, truth by truth. I didn't. Need revenge that screamed. I needed silence that echoed. And Jake? He was already hearing it. The divorce was finalized on a Monday afternoon. No drama in court, no drawn-out hearings. Just signatures on paper and a man who realized too late that I wasn't going to stay broken. Jake showed up to the final meeting in a crumpled shirt and hollow expression. He avoided eye contact the entire time. Maybe it was shame, or maybe it was the reality settling in that he'd lost the comfort of a woman who once would have forgiven him without question. As we walked out of the courthouse, he finally turned to me. "I didn't think you'd really go through with it," he said quietly. I looked at him, this man I had once built my entire future around, and I saw someone small. Not because he was flawed, but because he had chosen cowardice over honesty, selfishness over commitment, deceit over love. "You never really knew me," I replied. "That's why you lost." He didn't respond. He just watched me walk away. The following week, I changed everything. The house was now in my name only. I painted the walls, replaced the furniture, and took down every photo that had even a sliver of him in it. I emptied the drawers of old memories and filled them with pieces of myself I had long forgotten. Books. I never had time to read. Candles, I was told, were too strong. Little things that were mine and mine alone. I hosted a dinner party with my closest friends. The people Jake never liked, the ones he called too opinionated or bad influences. They brought wine, laughter, and something even more powerful, reminders of who I was before him and who I was becoming now. During cleanup, one of them asked me if I regretted anything. And you know what? I didn't. I don't regret loving Jake. I don't regret building a life with him or believing in a future together. That version of me was kind, loyal, and hopeful, but I do regret the years I spent silencing my own voice to protect his ego. I regret how small I let myself become to keep peace in a marriage built on illusion. But regret doesn't live here anymore. What lives here now is peace. Not the quiet, passive kind, but the powerful, earned kind. The kind you fight for after surviving the storm. And Jake? Well, it didn't take long for word to travel back. Caitlin didn't stick around. Apparently, she wasn't interested in real life, just the fantasy of being someone's escape. Once the real responsibilities came, lawyers, money issues, reputational fallout, she vanished. He tried to win me back after that. Left a handwritten letter in my mailbox one afternoon. It said, "I messed up. I thought the grass was greener, but I was standing on gold and didn't see it." I didn't even finish reading it. I folded it neatly and threw it in the trash. Right. Between an empty bottle of wine and an old to-do list that included call the plumber and pick up dog food. Because that's what Jake was now, just another task I had already taken care of, a mess I'd cleaned up. My life wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my worth, reclaiming the narrative. He told me he was visiting a friend, but I found her name on his phone, and instead of falling apart, I gave him an ultimatum and followed through. I made him face what he tried to bury. I held up a mirror to every lie and forced him to see the truth. And in the end, he walked away with nothing but the wreckage of his own decisions. Me? I walked away with something better. Myself, fully, finally. And this time, I'm not sharing that with anyone who doesn't earn it.